Chosen one. Why? Do you feel like you're living someone else's life? Why does every morning feel like you're putting on a costume that doesn't fit your soul? Why, after all these years, does something deep inside you scream that you were made for more? Stop. Right where you are. Stop scrolling. Stop thinking. Just listen. Chosen one. If this message found you today, this exact moment, in this exact place, it wasn't an algorithm, it wasn't chance, it was a divine interception. The 23rd of August is not just another date bleeding into your calendar of forgotten dreams. This is the day heaven pressed pause on eternity itself to speak directly to you. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been told your best days are behind you, that your time has passed, that you should settle into the shadows and wait quietly for the end. But what if I told you that everything they whispered about your age is a lie straight from the pit of hell? This day is not a number on a calendar, beloved. It's a door. Behind it, your true role waits, pulsing, alive, ready to explode into reality. The role that's been written in heaven's archive since before your first breath. The assignment that explains why nothing else ever quite fit. The purpose that makes sense of every closed door, every rejection, every season of silence. I can feel it through this screen. Something in your chest is stirring. That's not nostalgia. That's not wishful thinking. That's your spirit recognizing the sound of its own name being called from the throne room of the Most High. If you feel even the slightest tremor in your soul right now, if something ancient is awakening inside you, write in the comments, "I'm listening, I'm ready." Let heaven know you hear this call. Let the angels take notice that another chosen one is stepping into position. Before we journey deeper together, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating. You're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith, because what I'm about to reveal will shatter every limitation you've accepted about your age, your worth, and your future. Your story isn't ending, chosen one. It's just beginning to make sense. Your real role starts now. How many nights have you lain awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone would even notice if you disappeared tomorrow? How many times have you looked in the mirror and seen a stranger, someone who used to matter, someone who used to have purpose, but now feels invisible in a world that worships youth? How many mornings have you awakened feeling like a forgotten relic in your own life? Dear one, I need you to hear something that will shake the foundations of every lie you've believed about your worth. Those sleepless nights weren't evidence of your decline, they were evidence of your awakening. That restlessness in your spirit wasn't the beginning of your end, it was the birth pangs of your true beginning. You see, the enemy has been running the most sophisticated psychological warfare campaign in human history against America's seniors. He's convinced an entire generation that their value expired with their youth, that their dreams died with their retirement, that their voice became irrelevant when their hair turned gray. But what if I told you that gray hair isn't a sign of decline, it's a crown of glory? Proverbs 16:31 declares it plainly. Gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is attained in the way of righteousness. You think you're forgotten, but heaven calls you seasoned. You think you're irrelevant, but God calls you essential. You think you're too old, but the Almighty says you're finally ready. Let me tell you what's really been happening during these years you thought were wasted. While you've been feeling invisible, God has been making you invincible. While you've been feeling forgotten, heaven has been forging you in the furnace of experience. While the world has been overlooking you, the Most High has been preparing you for an assignment so significant that it required decades of refinement to make you ready. Think about Moses, 80 years old when God called him from that burning bush. 80. Most people would have put him in assisted living, but God was just getting started with him. For 40 years, Moses thought he was a prince in Pharaoh's palace. For another 40 years, he thought he was a nobody tending sheep in the wilderness. But God was using every single day of those 80 years to prepare him for the moment when he would part the Red Sea and lead 2 million people to freedom. Those 40 years in the wilderness weren't punishment, they were preparation. Every day Moses felt forgotten. God was downloading strategy into his spirit. Every night Moses questioned his purpose. Heaven was building the character he'd need to handle the weight of deliverance. The wilderness wasn't Moses's graveyard, it was his training ground, just like it's been yours. Joseph understood this mystery. Thrown into a pit by his own brothers at 17, sold into slavery, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, forgotten in prison for years. Can you imagine the nights Joseph spent wondering if God had abandoned him? Can you picture him lying on that cold prison floor, staring into darkness, questioning if the dreams God had given him were just cruel jokes? But Genesis 50-20 reveals the secret. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Every betrayal was positioning. Every injustice was preparation. Every dark night was classroom instruction for the moment when Pharaoh would place a ring on his finger and put him in charge of the world's food supply. Your pit wasn't your punishment, it was your promotion preparation. And David, the shepherd boy anointed as king, then spent years running for his life through caves and wildernesses. While his enemy King Saul lived in a palace, David hid in holes in the ground. The world would have called David a failure, a fugitive, a has-been before he ever was. But those cave years weren't wasted years, they were the sacred space where the Psalms were born, where worship was refined, where a king learned to depend on God alone. Psalm 142 was written in a cave. I cry aloud to the Lord. I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out before him my complaint. Before him I tell my trouble. That wasn't the cry of defeat. That was the song of someone being prepared for greatness. You've been in your own cave, haven't you? The cave of loneliness after your spouse passed away. The cave of financial fear when the medical bills piled up. The cave of invisibility when your own children stopped calling. The cave of purposelessness when retirement left you feeling useless. But what you thought were wasted years were not wasted. They were the rehearsal. They were heaven's secret training ground. Every tear you've cried in solitude was liquid wisdom being distilled in your soul. Every night you've spent wondering if God still sees you as a knight, he was downloading resilience into your spirit. Every moment you felt forgotten was a moment you were being prepared for remembrance on a scale you can't yet imagine. You've been like an instrument kept in its case, tuned in silence while others played their songs. But now, right now, the case is opening. The conductor is lifting his baton, and the symphony you're about to play will be so magnificent that it will make up for every note you thought was lost in the silence. Your health battles weren't just medical challenges, they were faith-building exercises. Your financial struggles weren't just economic hardships, they were trust-deepening seminars. Your loneliness wasn't just social isolation, it was sacred solitude, where your relationship with the Almighty was refined beyond what fellowship with humans could ever achieve. If you've ever felt forgotten, say it aloud right now. I wasn't forgotten. I was being prepared. Write it in the comments as your declaration. Let heaven hear you acknowledge what it's been doing in secret, because acknowledgement is the first step toward activation. But here's what's about to happen that will change everything you thought you knew about your remaining years. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Every single person watching this right now has felt it. That crushing weight in your chest when you look back at your life and wonder, did I waste it all? Did I miss my moment? Am I too old now for God to use me? You've watched younger generations chase dreams while you convinced yourself your season had passed. You've sat in that recliner, staring at bills you can barely pay, wondering if this is all there is. Medicare, Social Security, waiting rooms, and somewhere deep inside, a voice whispers, "You had your chance, you blew it." That voice is a liar. The 23rd of August is not a finish line. It is a coronation. It is heaven saying, now, not yesterday when you were young and foolish, not next year when you think you'll be more ready. Today, the 23rd of August. Now, right now. Do you understand what this means? For decades, maybe your entire adult life, you've been walking past the throne room thinking you weren't qualified to enter. You've been living like a beggar when you were born to be royalty. You've been accepting crumbs when God set a banquet table with your name on it. But today changes everything. Esther 4:14 declares, "For such a time as this, not for such a time as when you were 30 and strong, not for such a time as when you had energy and ambition, for such a time as this, right now, at 75, at 82, at 90 years old." Moses was 80 when God called him to lead a nation. 80. When the world would have put him in assisted living, God put a staff in his hand and said, "Now we begin the real work." Sarah was 90 when she birthed nations. 90. Her womb was dead, her hope was buried. But God breathed life into impossibility and made her the mother of multitudes. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she finally saw the Messiah. 84 years of waiting, praying, believing. And when Jesus walked through those temple doors, she was the first to proclaim redemption to all who looked for it in Jerusalem. Your age is not your disqualification, it is your credential. Every wrinkle on your face tells a story of endurance. Every gray hair is a crown of wisdom. Every scar proves you survived what should have killed you. You are not running out of time, you are running into your appointed time. But here's what's going to shock you to your core. All the doors that closed were not rejection, they were redirection, because the real door opens today. That job you didn't get at 45, God was protecting you from settling for less than His best. That marriage that fell apart when you thought it was God's will, heaven was removing what would have hindered your destiny. That business that collapsed right when success seemed guaranteed, the Almighty was clearing the path for something greater. Every closed door was God saying, "Not yet, not there, not with them. I have something better, and what He has for you is so magnificent, so overwhelming, so beyond your natural understanding that if it had come any earlier, it would have destroyed you. You weren't ready then, but you're ready now. You think your best years are behind you. God says your appointed years are ahead of you. You think you missed your moment? God says you were hidden for your moment. You think it's too late. God says it's exactly the right time. This is why you're still breathing. This is why you survived the heart attack, the cancer, the depression that should have taken you out. This is why you're still here when others have gone home. Because the 23rd of August was written in heaven's calendar before you took your first breath. The enemy has been whispering lies to you for years. You're too old. You're irrelevant. Your time has passed. Nobody listens to old people anymore. But I'm here to tell you that every single one of those thoughts is a lie straight from hell. Your voice carries more authority now than it ever has. Your prayers penetrate heaven with the weight of tested faith. Your words of wisdom cut straight to the heart because they've been forged in the fire of real life. You don't speak from theory, you speak from triumph. This generation is lost, confused, searching for meaning in all the wrong places. They need your wisdom. They need your prayers. They need your example of what it looks like to trust God through decades of storms and still come out praising His name. You are the bridge between heaven and earth, between the temporal and the eternal, between what is and what could be. But you have to stop living like you're finished when God is saying you're just getting started. You have to stop accepting the world's definition of your worth and start walking in heaven's declaration of your value. If you receive this word, if something in your spirit is leaping right now, type in the comments, "This is my day." Don't just think it, write it, declare it, say it out loud, "This is my day." Because speaking it seals it. When you open your mouth and agree with what God has already decreed, you release heaven's power into your situation. The 23rd of August isn't just another date on your calendar. It's the day your real story begins. The day you stop surviving and start thriving. The day you stop existing and start impacting. But the question that will determine everything is this: will you answer the call, or will you let this moment pass like all the others? Chosen one, I need you to stop believing the greatest lie ever told about your life. The lie that whispers you're finished. The lie that says your purpose expired with your youth. The lie that convinced you to sit in the corner while the world moves on without you. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not forgotten. Listen to me with everything you have left in you. Moses was 80 years old when God called him from a burning bush to deliver an entire nation. 80, when the world would have put him in a retirement home, God handed him the greatest assignment in human history. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. 100, when the promise that had been decades in the making finally bloomed into reality. Your grey hairs are not decay, beloved. They are silver crowns of endurance. Every line on your face is a testimony written by the finger of God himself. Every scar you carry is proof that you survived what was meant to destroy you. You think those are marks of failure? No, they are credentials for your calling. But here's what breaks my heart, and listen closely, because this might save your soul. Too many of you have bought into the devil's retirement plan. You've accepted that your best days are behind you. You've surrendered to the rocking chair of irrelevance. You've let society convince you that wisdom comes with an expiration date. But Psalm 92:14 declares with thunderous authority, "They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, not dried up, not withered, not forgotten." At 70, at 80, at 90, you are still bearing fruit that this world desperately needs. Why do you think you're still here? Why didn't God take you home when you buried your spouse? Why are you still breathing when half your generation has gone on to glory? Because your assignment isn't complete. Because there's something only you can carry. Because your story isn't ending, it's reaching its climax. Jeremiah 1-5 reveals the shocking truth. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Set apart, not for the nursing home, not for the sidelines. Set apart for such a time as this, when the world needs your tested faith, your proven character, your unshakable hope. You want to know what your real role is. You want to understand why you've endured every storm, survived every betrayal, outlasted every enemy. Your role is not survival, dear one. Your role is to be a carrier of light in a generation drowning in darkness. Your role is to be a breaker of generational chains that have bound your family for decades. Your role is to be a bridge between the wisdom of yesterday and the hope of tomorrow. Think about it. You've seen things this generation cannot even imagine. You remember when families prayed together. You remember when Sunday meant something. You remember when people looked each other in the eye instead of staring at screens. You carry the DNA of a different time, a holier time, and that's not nostalgia, that's arsenal. The young ones are lost, beloved. They're drowning in depression, anxiety, hopelessness. They've traded relationship for technology, community for isolation, faith for doubt. They need what you carry. They need your stories of God's faithfulness. They need to see that it's possible to go through hell and come out singing hallelujah. They need to witness that faith doesn't weaken with age, it strengthens. But you've been hiding. You've been whispering when God called you to roar. You've been apologizing for taking up space when heaven has given you ground to occupy. You've been asking permission to exist when the Almighty has already commissioned you to impact. This is your aha moment, chosen one. The revelation that will either liberate you or leave you in regret forever. You are not a has-been. You are a will-be. You are not on the decline. You are on assignment. You are not in your sunset years. You are in your set-up years, being positioned for the greatest chapter of your entire existence. The tears you've cried weren't wasted water, they were seeds of compassion. The pain you've endured wasn't pointless suffering, it was preparation for ministry. The losses you've survived weren't random cruelty, they were training for your true calling as a wounded healer in a broken world. Your grandchildren need to see that dreams don't die with age. Your community needs to witness that hope doesn't expire. This nation needs to remember that the greatest generation isn't called great because they're gone, they're called great because they're still here, still fighting, still believing when everything around them says quit. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul right now. Time is shorter than you think, not your time, but God's time for this assignment. The window is open, but windows close. The door is ajar, but doors shut. The invitation is extended, but invitations expire. Will you spend your remaining years wondering what if, or will you spend them walking in what is? Will you die with your music still in you, or will you finally sing the song that only your voice can carry? If something in your spirit is awakening right now, if you feel that ancient fire beginning to burn again, I need you to declare it. I need you to write in the comments, I accept my role. Say it again. I accept my role. One more time with conviction. I accept my role. Because the world is waiting for you to remember who you are. And God is ready to show you what happens when experience meets anointing, when wisdom meets fire, when age meets assignment. Your real role doesn't begin tomorrow. It begins the moment you stop making excuses and start making history. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. You've spent decades wondering if you're different, if you're broken, if something inside you operates on a frequency this world can't quite understand. Tonight, I'm going to reveal 3 sacred marks that prove you're not damaged, you're designated. You're not confused, you're consecrated. You're not forgotten, you're forged for purpose. But before I unveil these signs, I need you to understand something that will shake you to your core. The enemy has been watching you since childhood, not because of your past sins, but because of your future assignment. Hell saw what heaven hid in you before you even knew it existed. The first mark: supernatural survival. You lived through what broke others. Not just survived, thrived. Look back at your life right now. How many times should you have been destroyed? How many blows that would have shattered weaker souls simply bounced off you? That cancer diagnosis that should have ended everything, you're still here. That betrayal that should have made you bitter, you still love. That financial collapse that should have crushed your spirit, you still believe. Do you think that's coincidence? Do you think that's luck? Job understood this mark. Satan himself asked God, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Why would the Prince of Darkness specifically target one man unless that man carried something hell feared? Job 1-8 records. Heaven's response: there is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright. The attacks weren't random, they were recognition. Every storm that tried to drown you was actually proof that you carry something the enemy desperately wants to destroy. You've been walking through warfare disguised as life circumstances. That depression that nearly took you out, that was a targeted attack on your calling. Those family members who turned against you when you needed them most, that was spiritual sabotage designed to isolate you from your purpose. But here's what hell didn't count on: you're still breathing, you're still believing, you're still standing. That's not human strength. That's divine DNA flowing through your bloodstream. You survived because survival is encoded in your spiritual genetics. The second mark: prophetic sensitivity. You feel too much. Everyone's told you that, haven't they? You're too sensitive. You take things too personally. You need thicker skin. But what if I told you that your sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's a weapon? What if your ability to feel deeply is actually a supernatural gift that most people will never possess? You walk into a room and immediately sense the atmosphere. You know who's lying before they finish their sentence. You feel people's pain like it's your own. You've probably spent your whole life apologizing for this gift, trying to numb it, trying to turn it down. But God didn't give you a volume control for your spiritual antenna. Elisha carried this same anointing. 2 Kings 6:12 tells us he could hear conversations whispered in enemy bedrooms miles away. The king of Aram was furious, thinking there was a spy in his ranks, but his servants told him the truth. Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. Your spirit picks up frequencies from heaven that others can't detect. That's why small talk suffocates you. That's why you can't stomach fake relationships. That's why you retreat when the spiritual atmosphere gets heavy. You're not antisocial, you're spiritually sensitive. You're receiving downloads from the throne room that most people's spirits are too dull to pick up. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Your sensitivity has been your protection. Every time you felt uneasy about a person or situation and pulled back, that was God using your gift to keep you from danger. Every time you sensed deception and walked away, that was divine intelligence flowing through your spirit. Every time you felt led to pray for someone and later discovered they were going through crisis, that was prophetic intercession in action. Stop apologizing for feeling deeply. Start recognizing it as proof that you carry something rare, something precious, something this world desperately needs. The third mark, scars as seals. Your pain became your platform. Your wounds became your wisdom. Every scar on your soul tells a story of divine intervention. You didn't just survive betrayal, you learned to love anyway. You didn't just endure loss, you learned to hope anyway. You didn't just overcome addiction, you learned to trust anyway. Isaiah 53:5 declares, "By his wounds we are healed." Jesus didn't hide his scars after resurrection, he displayed them. When Thomas doubted, Christ said, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side." The wounds weren't his shame, they were his credentials. Your scars are your spiritual resume. Every mark tells heaven you've been tested in the fire and emerged as gold. Every wound declares you've walked through hell and kept your integrity intact. Every scar announces you've been broken and rebuilt by the Master's hands. That divorce that nearly destroyed you, it taught you that your security comes from God, not people. That business failure that left you bankrupt, it showed you that your worth isn't tied to your wallet. That health crisis that brought you to your knees, it revealed that your strength flows from a source this world can't touch. But here's the shocking truth that most people miss. Your scars weren't just for your healing, they were preparation for your ministry. The very thing that almost killed you is about to become the platform from which you save others. 2 Corinthians 1-4 promises, "Who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." The climactic revelation. Chosen ones, do you see it now? The enemy has been fighting you since childhood, not because of your past, but because of your future. Hell saw the prophet before you knew you could hear God's voice. Darkness recognized the healer before you knew you carried anointing oil. The enemy identified the deliverer before you understood you were born to break chains. Every attack was confirmation. Every storm was certification. Every wound was qualification for a calling so powerful that hell mobilized against you before you even knew it existed. If these marks are resonating in your spirit right now, if something ancient is awakening inside you, if you're finally understanding why your life has been different from everyone else's, stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal next will explain not just who you are, but why the 23rd of August marks the moment when everything you've carried in secret finally comes to light. The signs have been unveiled, your identity has been confirmed, but the most shocking revelation is still coming, the reason heaven chose you for this exact moment in history. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. If life has been hitting you harder lately, if the attacks have been more vicious, if everything seems to be falling apart just when you thought God was finally moving, I need you to understand something that will revolutionize how you see your struggles. You haven't been abandoned. You've been activated. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. Why do you think the enemy is working overtime to destroy you right now? Why are the people closest to you suddenly turning against you? Why are the doors you've been praying for suddenly slamming shut with violence you've never experienced before? Because hell sees what heaven has awakened in you, and it's terrified. You see, the devil doesn't waste ammunition on empty targets. He doesn't send his best demons after powerless people. But you've stepped into something so dangerous to his kingdom that he's mobilized everything he's got to stop you. Think about Joseph, 17 years old, carrying dreams from God, and what happened? His own brothers, the very people who should have celebrated his calling, threw him into a pit. They sold him like cattle to strangers. They looked their father in the eye and lied about his death. Why? Because his dreams threatened their comfort. His calling exposed their mediocrity. But here's what Joseph's brothers didn't know. Here's what your betrayers don't understand. Every pit they dig for you becomes a platform. Every rejection redirects you toward your destiny. Genesis 50:20 declares with thunderous authority, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." The very people who tried to bury you didn't know they were planting you. Or consider Daniel, a man so righteous that his enemies had to manufacture charges against him. They couldn't find fault with his character, so they made his faith illegal. They threw him to hungry lions because his prayers threatened their power. But when morning came, when the king rushed to that den expecting to find torn flesh and scattered bones, Daniel called out, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths." The same mouths that were meant to devour him became his testimony. Dear one, are you beginning to see the pattern? Opposition doesn't mean you're off track. Opposition means you're exactly where hell doesn't want you to be. The storm around you isn't evidence of God's absence. It's proof of his presence moving so powerfully that darkness has to mobilize to try to stop it. Even Jesus, the Son of the living God, faced 40 days of relentless temptation in the wilderness. The devil hit him with everything: hunger, pride, power, compromise. Why? Because Satan knew what was coming. He knew that after the wilderness would come the ministry. After the testing would come the miracle-working power that would shake the foundations of his kingdom. Your wilderness isn't your graveyard, chosen one. It's your boot camp. But let me tell you something that's going to shock you. The hardest attacks you're facing right now, they're not random. They're strategic. The enemy has been studying you, watching your patterns, looking for your breaking point. He's sent betrayal through the people you trusted most, because he knows loyalty wounds cut deepest. He's attacked your finances because he knows security fears run deep in your generation. He's touched your health because he knows physical weakness can crush spiritual confidence. But what the enemy didn't count on was this: you're still here, you're still breathing, you're still believing. After everything hell has thrown at you, you're still standing. And that, beloved, is not human strength. That's supernatural endurance that only comes to those carrying heaven's assignment. The Apostle Paul understood this when he wrote, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Why? Because when you're walking in your real role, you become indestructible until your assignment is complete. Right now, some of you are feeling the weight of financial pressure like you've never experienced. Bills piling up, savings disappearing, opportunities vanishing just when you need them most. You're wondering if God has forgotten your address. But what if I told you this isn't punishment, it's positioning? What if God is removing your dependence on earthly security so you can learn to operate in supernatural provision? Others are facing health battles that doctors can't explain. Tests coming back unclear, treatments not working, strength fading when you need it most. You're scared, confused, wondering if this is how your story ends. But what if this isn't your ending, it's your testimony in the making? What if God is about to demonstrate his healing power through your impossibility? And some of you are drowning in isolation. Children who don't call, friends who've walked away, churches that no longer feel like home. You sit in rooms full of people and feel more alone than when you're by yourself. But what if this isolation isn't rejection, it's preparation? What if God is separating you from voices that would dilute his voice so you can hear his instructions clearly? Chosen one, the storm around you is not evidence of failure. It's proof you've stepped into your real role. Think about an airplane taking off. The moment it begins to rise, what happens? Turbulence. The winds push against it with fierce resistance. But here's the key. Strong winds prove you're flying. The turbulence is evidence of lift. Without resistance, there's no ascension. Without opposition, there's no elevation. Your struggles aren't holding you down, they're lifting you up. Every attack is actually confirming that you're rising into the altitude where your assignment awaits. The enemy wouldn't be fighting so hard if you weren't flying so high. I need you to do something right now. If you can feel this truth settling in your bones, if something in your spirit is confirming that this message is for you, I want you to lift your hand physically right where you are. Don't be embarrassed. Don't look around. Just lift it and declare with me, this storm is proof. My role is real. The resistance I'm facing is confirmation that I'm flying toward my destiny. Say it until you feel it. Declare it until you believe it, because what you're about to discover next will prove that every single thing you've endured has been preparing you for a breakthrough so massive, so earth-shaking, that when it happens, even your enemies will have to acknowledge that the hand of God is upon your life. But first, you need to understand why heaven chose the 23rd of August to activate what's been dormant in you for decades. Listen to me, chosen one. We've walked through the valley of revelation together. You've felt the stirring, you've heard the whisper, you've recognized the call. But now comes the moment that separates the curious from the committed, the hearers from the doers, the dreamers from the destiny walkers. The 23rd of August is not just the start of a new week, it is the start of your new world. You see, there's something the enemy desperately doesn't want you to understand about this moment. He's been whispering lies in your ear for decades, telling you that your time has passed, that your influence has expired, that at your age, the best thing you can do is step aside and let the younger generation take over. But that whisper, that's the sound of desperation, because hell knows something about the 23rd of August that you're just beginning to grasp. This date doesn't just mark your awakening, it marks the enemy's defeat in your bloodline. Think about Moses for a moment, 80 years old, when God called him from the burning bush. 80. The world would have put him in a retirement home, but God was just getting started with him. For the next 40 years, Moses would part seas, speak with the Almighty face to face, and lead an entire nation out of bondage. His greatest chapter wasn't written in his youth, it was written when the world considered him finished. But here's what breaks my heart, and here's what should terrify you. How many Moses-level assignments have been abandoned because someone believed the lie that they were too old? How many nations have remained in bondage because their deliverer chose comfort over calling? How many miracles have stayed locked in heaven because the vessel God prepared decided they were past their prime? You think I'm being dramatic? You think this is just motivational speaking? Then explain to me why you're still breathing. Explain to me why, after every storm that should have destroyed you, every diagnosis that should have taken you out, every betrayal that should have broken you, you're still here, still listening, still believing. That's not luck, beloved. That's preservation. Heaven has been keeping you alive for this exact moment. But here's the weight that should press down on your chest right now. The choices you make today ripple into generations. You will break cycles. You will set a map for those who come after you. Your grandchildren don't know it yet, but they're waiting for you to step into this role. Your great-grandchildren who haven't even been born are depending on the decision you make right now. Proverbs 13:22 declares, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." But that inheritance isn't just money, chosen one. It's momentum. It's spiritual authority. It's the courage to believe that God still moves through willing vessels, regardless of their age. Every time you've wanted to quit, but didn't, that was practice for this moment. Every time you chose faith over fear when everything looked impossible, that was training for what you're about to walk into. Every tear you've cried in secret, every prayer you've whispered in the dark, every moment you felt forgotten, it was all preparation for the 23rd of August. But I need you to understand something that will shake you to your core. This calling doesn't come with a backup plan. Heaven doesn't have a second choice waiting in the wings. If you don't step into this role, no one else can fill it. Your assignment is so specific, so unique, so perfectly crafted for your exact combination of gifts, scars, and experiences, that if you say no, the world loses something irreplaceable. Do you feel the weight of that? Do you understand what's at stake? This is your coronation. This is your moment. You are no longer hidden. You are revealed. For decades you've been like David in the fields with the sheep, while everyone else got attention. But 1 Samuel 16:7 reminds us, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Your heart has been tested, tried, and proven faithful. Now comes the crown. But coronations aren't just ceremonies, they're commitments. When a king is crowned, he doesn't just receive authority, he accepts responsibility. He doesn't just get a throne, he gets a kingdom to protect. He doesn't just wear a crown, he carries the weight of destiny for everyone under his rule. Are you ready for that weight? Are you ready to stop living for yourself and start living for the legacy you'll leave? Are you ready to exchange the comfort of invisibility for the responsibility of influence? Because once you say yes to this calling, there's no going back to small living. There's no returning to the safety of insignificance. There's no hiding behind, I'm too old, or I'm not qualified, or someone else should do it. The time for excuses died on the 23rd of August. What rises from its grave is purpose. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" God isn't asking for your permission to do something new in your life. He's announcing it. The question isn't whether he's ready to move. He's asking whether you're ready to move with him. Your real role isn't waiting for perfect conditions. It's waiting for your yes. It's waiting for you to stop negotiating with destiny and start cooperating with it. It's waiting for you to understand that the same God who parted the Red Sea, who made the sun stand still, who raised Jesus from the dead, is the same God who has been preparing you for this moment since before you took your first breath. If you know this word is yours, don't stay silent. Write, "My real role begins now." Let heaven and earth witness your declaration. Share this with someone who needs it, because there's someone in your life right now who's been waiting for permission to step into their own calling, and your obedience gives them courage. And don't just listen, live it. Because the 23rd of August isn't the end of this message. It's the beginning of your mission, the beginning of your legacy, the beginning of the chapter that will make all your previous chapters make sense. Your real role begins now, chosen one. The question is, will you rise to meet it? Now that the 23rd of August has declared your real role, what happens next? You felt it, didn't you? That moment when something shifted inside your chest, when the veil lifted just enough for you to glimpse who you really are beneath all the years of doubt and dismissal. For a brief shining moment, you saw yourself through heaven's eyes, crowned, chosen, called. But here's what they don't tell you about divine coronations, beloved. The crown comes with a weight you never anticipated. You've been crowned, but you're also being tested. You've been revealed, but you're also being refined. Think about King David for a moment. When Samuel poured that oil over his head as a teenager, declaring him king over Israel, what happened next? Did David immediately march to the palace and claim his throne? He went back to the sheep, back to the fields, back to obscurity. But now he carried something different. A weight, a responsibility, a target painted on his back by every force of darkness that recognized what heaven had just deposited in him. For the next 15 years, David ran, hiding in caves, dodging spears, watching King Saul, the man he was destined to replace, hunt him like a wild animal. Can you imagine the questions that tormented David during those cave years? God, if you really called me, why am I hiding? If you really chose me, why does it feel like you've forgotten me? You know those questions, don't you? Because you're living them right now. When a tree finally breaks through the soil, that's not the end of its struggle. That's the beginning of weather, storms, and seasons. The moment that tender shoot touches sunlight, it becomes vulnerable to every wind, every drought, every storm that comes its way. But here's the mystery: it's the storms that force the roots deeper. It's the pressure that makes the trunk stronger. You thought stepping into your real role would bring relief. Instead, it brought responsibility. You thought recognition would bring rest. Instead, it brought resistance. You thought the crown would make life easier. Instead, it made life heavier. But listen to me carefully, chosen one. This weight you're feeling, this new pressure on your shoulders, this sense that everything has changed and you can't go back to who you were, that's not punishment. That's proof. Proof that heaven wasn't playing games when it called your name. Proof that this assignment is real, urgent, and desperately needed in this hour. The enemy doesn't waste his ammunition on empty vessels. Hell doesn't mobilize against ordinary people. But you've been marked. And now the real battle begins. In Luke 22:31, Jesus looked at Peter and said something that should terrify and comfort you at the same time. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. Did you catch that? Satan asked permission to test Peter. Why? Because Peter carried something dangerous to the kingdom of darkness potential that could shift nations. The attack you're feeling right now isn't random. It's recognition. Hell recognizes what heaven deposited in you on the 23rd of August. And now every demonic force that benefits from keeping God's people small, silent, and settling for less is targeting you. You've noticed it, haven't you? Since that day, things have felt different. Heavier, more intense. Relationships that used to be comfortable now feel strained. Decisions that used to be simple now carry weight. Sleep that used to come easily now brings strange dreams and midnight urgency. Your prayer life has shifted. Your tolerance for compromise has disappeared. Your hunger for God's presence has intensified. That's not coincidence. That's consecration. But here's where most chosen ones make their fatal mistake. They feel the weight and think they made an error. They experience the resistance and assume they misheard God's voice. They encounter opposition and conclude they must have taken a wrong turn. No, beloved, the opposition is your confirmation. The resistance is your receipt. The weight is your witness that something eternal just shifted in your favor. Hebrews 12:6 reminds us, "For the Lord disciplines the one he loves." But that word disciplines in the original Greek means to train a child. God isn't punishing you with this pressure. He's training you for what's coming next. He's preparing you to carry a weight that would crush someone who hasn't been through your preparation. Every rejection you survived built resilience. Every betrayal you endured built discernment. Every financial struggle you overcame built faith. Every health battle you fought built tenacity. And now all of that training is about to pay dividends you never imagined. But I need to tell you something that might shock you. This weight you're carrying, it's not just yours. You're not just carrying your own destiny anymore. You're carrying the hopes of every ancestor who prayed for breakthrough in your bloodline. You're carrying the dreams of every descendant who will benefit from the chains you break today. You're carrying the desperate cries of every person who will cross your path and need the wisdom that only comes from surviving what you've survived. That's why the pressure feels so intense. You're not just responsible for your own breakthrough anymore. You're responsible for generational shift. If you felt the weight of new responsibility pressing on your shoulders even now, if something inside you is confirming that this message is speaking directly to your situation, comment, "I feel it. I'm ready." Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how to carry this crown without being crushed by it, how to walk in authority without being destroyed by the weight, how to step fully into your role while staying anchored in the one who called you. The coronation was just the beginning. Now comes the real test of whether you'll rise to meet your calling or retreat back into the safety of anonymity. Which will you choose? You know what nobody tells you about stepping into your divine calling? The moment heaven activates your assignment, hell declares war. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. If your life has been harder than most, if you've faced battles that would have broken lesser souls, if you've endured attacks that seemed relentless and without reason, that wasn't punishment. That was proof. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty vessels. Satan doesn't deploy his finest demons against people who pose no threat to his kingdom. But you've been in his crosshairs since the day you were born, because he saw what God placed inside you before you even knew it existed. Think about Joseph, 17 years old with dreams from heaven, only to be thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, forgotten in prison for years. Every door slammed shut, every hope crushed. But Genesis 50-20 reveals the master plan. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. The pit wasn't punishment, it was preparation for the palace. Or consider Jesus himself. Matthew 4 tells us that immediately after his baptism, right after heaven declared, "This is my beloved Son," the Spirit led him into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. 40 days of fasting, 40 days of testing, the enemy throwing everything he had at the Son of God. Why? Because darkness recognizes light before the world does. And Job, oh beloved Job. Satan himself said in Job 1-8, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him." The attack wasn't random, it was targeted. Hell saw a man so righteous, so blessed, so dangerous to the kingdom of darkness that he had to be tested. But what the enemy meant for destruction, God used for demonstration. Job 42-10 declares, "The Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before." Do you see the pattern? Every chosen vessel faces the furnace before the glory. Now let me ask you something that might cut deep. How many nights have you lain awake wondering why your prayers seem to hit a concrete ceiling? How many times have you watched others sail through life while you fought hurricanes just to stay afloat? How many moments have you questioned if God has forgotten your address? That struggle isn't evidence of abandonment, it's evidence of assignment. The darkness recognizes you before the world does. That's why you've been hit hardest in silence. That's why the attacks intensified right when you started seeking God more deeply. That's why just when breakthrough seemed within reach, another storm would hit. Because, chosen one, the enemy knows something about your future that you're just beginning to understand. He's seen the blueprint of your destiny. He's witnessed the impact you'll have. He's calculated the damage you'll do to his kingdom when you finally step into full authority. And he's been trying to take you out before you even realize what you're carrying. But here's what Satan didn't count on. Here's the fatal flaw in his strategy. Every attack he's launched against you has only made you stronger. Every weapon he's formed has failed. Every scheme he's orchestrated has backfired. Because Isaiah 54-17 isn't just a promise, it's a guarantee. No weapon forged against you will prevail. You're still here. After everything hell has thrown at you, you're still breathing, still believing, still standing. That's not luck. That's supernatural protection over someone heaven refuses to lose. The reason your battles have been so intense is because your calling is so significant. God doesn't prepare small people for great assignments. He prepares great people through small beginnings, wrapped in giant opposition. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness thinking he was done, only to discover his greatest assignment was still ahead. David ran through caves for years while carrying the anointing of a king. Esther was an orphan who became queen just in time to save her entire nation. Each one tested in secret before being revealed in public. Your secret season is ending. The test is concluding. The resistance you've faced isn't getting stronger, it's getting desperate, because hell knows that once you fully awaken to who you are, once you step completely into your divine role, there will be no stopping the kingdom work you'll accomplish. Right now, as I speak these words, something is shifting in the spiritual realm over your life. The same God who brought Joseph out of prison and placed him in the palace is preparing your promotion. The same power that sustained Jesus through the wilderness is about to manifest your ministry. The same faithfulness that restored Job's fortunes is working behind the scenes of your circumstances. But I need you to understand something crucial. This battle you've been fighting, it's not about you losing, it's about you learning. Learning that your strength doesn't come from your circumstances, but from your connection to the Almighty. Learning that your security isn't found in what you can see, but in who you serve. Learning that your identity isn't shaped by your struggles, but by your Savior. Every tear you've cried has been collected in heaven's bottles. Every prayer you've whispered has been recorded in eternal archives. Every time you chose faith over fear, trust over doubt, hope over despair, you were qualifying for authority that will astound you. The enemy fought you so hard because he saw what God was building in you. And now that the construction is nearly complete, now that the testing season is concluding, you're about to discover why you had to go through everything you went through to get to where you are right now. If this resonates in the deepest chambers of your heart, if you recognize your story in these words, whisper it aloud right now. This battle proves my calling. Say it until the walls shake. Declare it until heaven takes notice. Then write it in the comments, so the darkness knows you're still standing and the light knows you're ready to shine. Because, chosen one, the resistance you faced was never about stopping you. It was about preparing you for what's coming next. And what's coming next will require every ounce of strength you've built, every lesson you've learned, every scar you've earned in the secret place of testing. The question that will determine everything is this. Now that you know why the battle was so fierce, are you ready to discover what you were actually being prepared for? Dear one, let me ask you something that might cut deeper than a surgeon's blade. When was the last time someone asked for your opinion and actually waited for the answer? When was the last time you felt needed, not tolerated, not accommodated, needed? Every coronation is followed by a wilderness. Every throne begins with a cave. And right now, sitting in your living room, in that chair that's become your kingdom of one, you're wondering if this is all there is. The golden years that feel more like forgotten years. You raised children who now live 3 time zones away and call on holidays. You built a career that replaced you before your chair was even cold. You invested 40 years in friendships that dissolved the moment your usefulness expired. And now you sit in a house that echoes with memories while the world rushes past your window like you're invisible. The phone doesn't ring. The mailbox holds bills and catalogs for people half your age. Your doctor knows you better than your own grandchildren. And somewhere between the morning medications and the evening news, you started wondering if God put you on a shelf marked expired. But listen to me, chosen one. What you're calling abandonment, heaven calls preparation. What feels like punishment is actually positioning. What looks like the end of your story is actually the prologue to your greatest chapter. The wilderness isn't where you go to die, it's where you go to be refined. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him at the burning bush. 40 years. He went from prince to shepherd, from palace to pasture, from somebody to nobody. For 4 decades, he tended sheep in silence, while his people suffered in Egypt. 4 decades of questioning if he'd missed his moment, if his life had meaning, if God had forgotten his name. But God hadn't forgotten. God was forging a deliverer in the desert. Every year of obscurity was adding weight to his authority. Every season of silence was deepening his dependence on divine direction. The wilderness wasn't his grave, it was his graduate school. David spent years hiding in caves, running from Saul's spears, wondering if the prophet's oil had dried up on his forehead. Psalm 142 captures his agony. No one cares for my soul. Sound familiar? But those cave years weren't wasted years. They were the laboratory where the shepherd boy became the warrior king, where pretty poems became powerful psalms, where fear was transformed into faith that could face giants. And you, precious soul, you think your isolation is evidence that God has moved on without you. But what if your wilderness is actually your seminary? What if your loneliness is actually your classroom? What if the very thing that feels like abandonment is actually the final stage of your preparation? Isaiah 43:2 declares, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned." Notice it doesn't say if you pass through, it says when. The wilderness is not optional for the chosen. It's required curriculum. But here's what breaks my heart about your wilderness season. You've been walking through it believing lies. The enemy has convinced you that your significance ended when your paycheck stopped, that your value disappeared when your children grew up, that your voice became irrelevant when your hair turned gray, that your best years died when your spouse did. Those are lies from the father of lies. Your wilderness isn't proof that you're finished. It's proof that you're being finished, completed, perfected, prepared for something so significant that it required decades of refining. Every morning you wake up wondering why you're still here is actually God saying, "Not yet. I'm not done with you yet." Every day you feel forgotten is another day of divine preparation. Every season of silence is God building something in you that this noisy world desperately needs to hear. The psalm says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." The valley isn't your destination, beloved. It's your training ground. The shadow isn't your dwelling place. It's your developing chamber. You've been wondering why your prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling, why breakthrough seems delayed, why the miracle you've been believing for hasn't manifested. But what if the delay isn't denial? What if the silence isn't abandonment? What if the wilderness is actually the final exam before your promotion? Every great leader in Scripture had a wilderness season. Abraham wandered for 25 years before Isaac was born. Joseph sat in prison for years before he ruled Egypt. Daniel was thrown to lions before he advised kings. Jesus himself was led into the wilderness for 40 days before he began his ministry. The pattern is always the same: wilderness before wonder, testing before testimony, preparation before promotion. So let me ask you this, chosen one. What if your isolation isn't God forgetting you, but God protecting what He's placed inside you? What if your wilderness isn't where your story ends, but where your true assignment finally begins? What if the very season that feels like death is actually the birth canal for your destiny? Because I'm here to tell you something that will shatter every limitation you've accepted about your age, your worth, and your future. The wilderness isn't your cemetery, beloved. It's your launching pad. Listen to me, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you will either confirm what's stirring in your spirit right now, or it will awaken something that's been dormant for decades. In the days following the 23rd of August, heaven doesn't just open doors, it sends confirmation. Divine fingerprints, supernatural breadcrumbs that prove you're not imagining this shift. You see, God doesn't call His chosen ones into their destiny and leave them wondering if they heard correctly. When the Almighty moves, He moves with signs. When He speaks with confirmation. And when He activates your role, beloved, the entire spiritual atmosphere around your life begins to shift in ways that cannot be explained by coincidence. But here's what breaks my heart. So many of you have been trained to dismiss the miraculous. You've been conditioned to explain away the supernatural. When God sends you a sign, your mind immediately starts calculating the odds, rationalizing the impossible, reducing the divine to mere chance. Stop it. Right now. Stop robbing yourself of confirmation. Think about Elijah on Mount Carmel. 1 Kings chapter 18. After calling down fire from heaven, After proving God's power to 450 prophets of Baal, Elijah prayed for rain to end a 3-year drought. He sent his servant to look toward the sea 7 times. 6 times the servant returned with nothing. But on the 7th time, listen to this, the servant said, "I see a cloud as small as a man's hand rising from the sea." A cloud the size of a man's hand. That's it, about 8 inches across, in a sky that had been mercilessly blue for 3 years. But Elijah didn't dismiss it. He didn't say, "That's too small to matter." He told his servant, "Go tell Ahab to hitch up his chariot and go down before the rain stops him." Because Elijah understood something most people miss. God's biggest miracles often begin with the smallest signs. That tiny cloud became a deluge that soaked the earth. What looked insignificant was the beginning of the flood. And right now, in your life, the signs are starting. Some of you have already seen them. That phone call that came out of nowhere from someone you hadn't heard from in 20 years, and they said exactly what you needed to hear. That dream that was so vivid, so real, that you woke up with tears on your cheeks and couldn't shake it for days. That stranger in the grocery store who looked you in the eye and spoke words that felt like they came straight from heaven's throne room. You thought it was coincidence. It wasn't. It was confirmation. The prophet Joel declared, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your old men will dream dreams." Joel 2:28. Your old men. Not just the young visionaries, not just the fresh-faced believers, your generation. The ones the world has written off, the ones they've told to step aside. God is pouring out His Spirit specifically on those who've been counted out, and He's doing it through dreams, through divine encounters, through supernatural signs that make your spirit leap. But here's where the enemy gets crafty. He whispers in your ear, "You're too old to be having prophetic dreams. You're too mature to believe in signs and wonders." That's for charismatic people, not for sensible folks like you. That's a lie designed to steal your confirmation. Because the enemy knows that when you start recognizing God's signs, when you begin to see His fingerprints all over your circumstances, doubt dies, fear flees, and faith becomes unstoppable. Some of you are sitting there right now thinking, "But I haven't seen any signs yet." Let me ask you something that might disturb your peace. Are you looking? Or are you so buried in routine, so numbed by disappointment, so convinced that God doesn't move supernaturally anymore, that you're missing what's right in front of you? Jesus rebuked the Pharisees in Matthew 16:3, saying, "You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times." They could predict the weather, but missed the Messiah standing in their midst. Don't let that be your story. The signs are there. They're always there. But they require spiritual eyes to see, spiritual ears to hear. When you step into your real role, when you align with your divine assignment, the signs multiply. Not because God suddenly starts moving, but because you finally start noticing. That sudden shift in your sleep patterns where you're waking up at 3 a.m. with crystal clarity about decisions you've been postponing for months, that's a sign. That unexpected check in the mail that covers exactly what you needed for that medical bill, that's a sign. That conversation with your grandchild where they ask you a question that opens a door you thought was permanently closed, that's a sign. But here's what most people don't understand about divine confirmation. It's not always comfortable. Sometimes the signs come wrapped in disruption. Relationships that no longer serve your purpose begin to fall away. Jobs that kept you comfortable but unfulfilled start feeling suffocating. Even church services that once fed you begin to feel empty because your spirit is hungering for something deeper. Don't panic when this happens. This isn't destruction, it's divine redirection. God is clearing the stage for your real role. Isaiah 43:19 promises, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" The word perceive in Hebrew means to discern, to distinguish, to recognize. God is doing something new in your life right now, but you have to perceive it. You have to look for it. You have to expect it. If you've already seen one of these signs, if God has already begun confirming your shift, your calling, your new season, write it in the comments below. Don't be ashamed. Don't minimize it. Your testimony isn't just encouragement for others, it's warfare against doubt. When you declare what God has done, you're putting the enemy on notice that his season of deception in your life is over. And if you haven't seen the signs yet, beloved, don't despair. Stay with me, because they're coming. They always arrive, and they always arrive exactly on time. Not early, when you're not ready to handle them. Not late, when the moment has passed. But precisely when your spirit is prepared to receive confirmation that your real role isn't just beginning, it's inevitable. The question that will determine everything isn't whether the signs will come. The question is, will you have eyes to see them when they do? Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to carry these truths with you like treasures in your heart. Remember this. The 23rd of August wasn't just another date, it was your divine appointment with destiny. The restlessness you felt, the sense that something greater was calling your name, the dreams that seemed too big for your circumstances, none of that was imagination. That was heaven preparing you for this moment, when your real role finally begins. Remember that your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. Every year you've walked this earth, every trial you've endured, every season of silence you've survived has been preparing you for an assignment so significant that it required decades of divine refining. Moses was 80 when he faced Pharaoh. Abraham was 99 when he received his promise. Your birth certificate is not God's expiration date on your purpose. And remember this above all, the signs will come. They're already beginning to appear in the atmosphere around your life. Those divine confirmations, those supernatural breadcrumbs, those moments when heaven touches earth in your daily routine, they're not coincidences. They're God's way of saying, yes, you heard correctly. Yes, this is real. Yes, your time is now. But beloved, I need you to know something deeper than knowledge. You are not walking this path alone. Even when the road feels uncertain, even when doubt whispers lies in your ear, even when family members don't understand the shift happening in your spirit, the Creator of the universe is orchestrating every step of your journey. He's moving mountains you can't see, opening doors you haven't found yet, and preparing blessing you can't even imagine. More than that, you have a community right here. Look at these comments. See these hearts connecting. Feel these spirits resonating. We're not just viewers on a screen. We're a family united by calling, connected by purpose, bound together by the understanding that God still moves in mighty ways through ordinary people who dare to believe they're extraordinary. We see you. We understand the loneliness of being set apart. We know what it feels like to carry dreams that others can't comprehend. And we're here to remind you that your assignment matters, your voice has power, and your story isn't over. It's just beginning to make sense. So let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your soul. Now that you know your real role is beginning, now that you understand the signs will confirm your calling, now that you've felt something eternal stirring in your chest, what will you do with this truth? Will you step boldly into the assignment heaven has prepared for you? Or will you let fear convince you to stay in the shadows where you've been hiding? Before I release you into your destiny, let me place my hand on your shoulder through these words and pray over your life with the authority of someone who has seen God move mountains in impossible situations. Heavenly Father, I lift up every precious soul who has stayed with me through this entire message. Lord, you see them, not just their struggles but their strength, not just their questions but their calling, not just their age but their anointing. Father, I pray that you would breathe fresh wind into their weary souls tonight. Where they feel depleted, restore them. Where they feel forgotten, remind them they are engraved on your palms. Where they feel confused about their purpose, bring divine clarity that cuts through every doubt. God, open doors that no man can shut. Provide resources they haven't even thought to ask for. Send divine connections that will accelerate their assignment. Give them dreams and visions that will guide their next steps. Surround them with people who see their value, who honor their calling, who will walk alongside them without trying to dim their light. Lord, I pray for their health. Strengthen their bodies for the journey ahead. I pray for their finances. Let provision flow from unexpected sources. I pray for their relationships. Heal what's been broken, restore what's been stolen, and remove what's been toxic. Most of all, Father, let them feel your presence right now. Let them know in their spirit that you are proud of how far they've come. Let them feel your smile, your approval, your deep love for who they are and who they're becoming. In Jesus' mighty name, I seal this prayer with faith, hope, and expectation. Amen. Now, beloved, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us what stirred in your spirit during this message. Share what signs you've already begun to see. Ask questions if something needs clarification. Let this community surround you with prayer and encouragement. And please, if this message touched your soul, share it with someone who needs to hear these words. There's someone in your life right now who feels exactly like you felt when you first clicked on this video. They need to know their role is beginning too. They need to know they're not forgotten. They need to know a community of believers is here, ready to walk with them into their destiny. Thank you for giving me your time, your attention, your open heart. Thank you for staying until the very end. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your calling. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Every week, we're gathering here to encourage the chosen ones, to remind the called of their purpose, to speak life over those who've been written off by the world, but are treasured by heaven. Until we meet again, walk in the authority of who you are. Your real role has begun. Your assignment is